All right, in this video, I want to revisit the significance about the passing off case, the Bitcoin passing off case that never was heard. So, all right, my name's Gavin Mehl. About a year ago, we had the COPA trial with the Kleiman v. Wright trial started back in, the Kleiman trial was 2018, and then it was resolved in 2020 when it was sustained on appeal in 2023 at the end, where the origins of Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, were determined that Craig Wright was basically the holder of the original Bitcoin coins. He was the controller. He had to pay a small, less than 1% fine, not even 1%, a small fine compared to the total case in sanctions. Remember, the case was $66 billion, and he paid 100 and something million to a third party entity, which was controlled by his current wife and ex-wife and Kleiman. Now, after that, they had the COPA case, and in the COPA case, that was determined that he wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto, and the big case that was combined from the COPA case after the Kleiman, all that stuff happened, the Norway case happened. The big case that was combined, it originally started off with Kraken. And Kraken was, they were stopped on the passing off case because it was joined with COPA, pending the resolution of the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto. Right? So then after the decision came down and all the coins, you guys remember back a year ago, it was March of 2024, there was 2,000 BTC that had moved from the early Satoshi wallets, really early. I'm talking like these were Satoshi mined coins. There was like indisputable Satoshi coins, almost 2,000 of them. 2,000 at the time was like $140 million. Shortly thereafter, in the COPA case, Craig Wright was ordered the £6 million judgment that he had to pay. And you remember in the case, Craig Wright was testifying that he said, I'm funding my own case. And the judge and COPA says, no, Calvin Ayre's doing it for you, and N-Chain's doing it for you, and you're getting help. You're not paying for any of this. But all this stuff's happening. And this worldwide freezing order comes in shortly thereafter from the COPA case from Judge Miller saying, you're not allowed to sell any of your assets or move any assets. But there was already this 2,000 BTC had moved from the Satoshi wallets, right? Shortly before that. So then Craig Wright pays the £6 million attorney fees over to COPA. Soon as that, shortly after that, he files the passing off case on his own merit, saying he's not Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, even though he wasn't saying, I'm not Satoshi Nakamoto, I'm just a investor, I'm a miner, and I have an interest in the naming rights of Bitcoin being correctly identified as in the white paper. Now, this was the case they wanted to stop at all costs. The naming rights were one thing. They definitely didn't want him to win that, but it was the passing off case that was the one that would completely overturn the entire industry. This passing off case, had it gone forward and in favor of Dr. Wright, it would have potentially overturned the whole market and industry. I mean, we're talking BTC would no longer be Bitcoin. It would just be like Satoshi calls it Greg coin or Craig coin or Greg coin or BTC or meme coin, anything you wanted, but just it wouldn't be called Bitcoin anymore. And then the other one would be called Bitcoin, the original protocol, Bitcoin SV. So that's the one that they went to war on over. And you remember that big case was like a $1 trillion case. I mean, when he filed it pro se, he filed it in his own name, pro se. And then the court ended up determining, they said, Craig Wright, you're not allowed to call yourself Satoshi Nakamoto anymore. And in the case, he didn't say that, but they sanctioned him and said, if you don't come into court, we're going to hold you in contempt and arrest you, potentially arrest you. And that's when they dressed up like a clown outfit, and they had Judge Miller and they had all the attorneys there dressed up in costumes. And then Craig Wright gave him the flip and the bird, and flat out didn't show. One of the most gangster moves, I think, in court of all time. People are like, I wonder if he's going to show up. If he shows up, they had Artie Van Pelt there. They had Tufty the Cat. They had every Craig Wright hater was there. They flew in, and the courtroom was packed, and it was sweating, and the makeup was coming down the judge's face. I heard, sweating bullets, and the attorney was wearing his makeup, and he was sweating bullets. It was just a complete chaos in the courtroom of a packed house. No Craig Wright. They were all there to see Craig Wright get taken away in shackles. No Craig Wright. Next few days, they say, Craig, come into court on the telephone. And at that, Judge Miller had been disqualified on a declaration. Now, I had actually been a part of that declaration. I filed the affidavit. I wrote an affidavit alleging that the disqualification of Miller was proper because I had firsthand personal knowledge interviewing David Pierce, interviewing him, where he said he met with the judge. He talked about the case, talked about Adam Back. The petition on change.org got removed from the internet that Scott had put up. And, this was all part of my declaration, part of my affidavit saying, this is totally biased and prejudice. I mean, you guys got the guy who's in charge of change.org is Jack Dorsey, who's also, the founding member of COPA. Of course, he's going to take the petition down so nobody knows about investigating these judges. This needs to be ruled on by another judge. Judge, nope, he strikes it, says, I'll do it myself. And at that point, the case basically became a complete joke. Without a judge ruling without jurisdiction. But it was the passing off case that he also ruled on in that and says, again, without jurisdiction, because in order to have jurisdiction over a case, you got to be the judge on the case. He wasn't even the judge on the passing off case. There was no judge yet. In fact, COPA and BTC Core hadn't even answered the case yet. Instead, they did this traverse motion and said, hey, there's a new case with another party, Craig Wright, suing other people like in the case. Let's bring it into Judge Miller's court and say, can you rule on this passing off case as well and throw Craig Wright in jail? Oh, sure, no problem. Oh, would you also rule on your own disqualification too? No problem. Bing, 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 rubber stamped the whole thing, right? And they say, all right, that was justice for you. And that's why they call it just us over there in the UK. So, I mean, this was the, a kangaroo court at its finest. And I mean, I really went into approaching the court case and reporting on it like as a very neutral party. And I remain that way, but I'm just calling it like it is. It was an absolute insane, complete crock of a court hearing I've ever heard in my life. There was no justice at all. But it was the passing off case that they wanted to get rid of. And that passing off case was from the champagne passing off cases where, champagne wines were passing off. And so I just had there's some things I'm not allowed to talk about. All right. And I'm sharing this. I'm recapping a lot of this video, this little talk here today, because it's fresh in my mind, put it that way. And a lot of these subjects, I'm not really able to go about further as to why. But it's really exciting, interesting stuff coming out right now. And there's a lot more to come. So I just want to kind of bring people's attention back to this passing off case, because the passing off case was really what they were after, stopping that case. That was the ultimate. And here we are a year later, and, leave a comment as to what you think. How it all happened. Did Dr. Craig Wright get justice over there? I'm sure the BTC guys that watch my channel say they did. Okay, great. I mean, and that's fine. But ultimately, did he really get his day in court? Should he have been arrested? Lots more to come. My name is Gavin Mehl. Be sure to hit the ones, subscribe, check out my old videos on the Kleiman or the COPA case and also the passing off case and all the space I've done on it. It's pretty freaking amazing piece of history. Love to be a part of it. Appreciate you guys. See you at the top.